A brief background and history on the Russia-Ukraine war. It has been a month since Russia, or should we say Putin, invaded Ukraine and completely changed the present and the future of the world. This war has led to the destruction of multiple cities of Ukraine, thousands of military casualties on both sides, hundreds of Ukrainian civilian deaths, displacement of millions of Ukrainians, both internally and externally, and a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Since the start of the war, people have been wondering what more could have been done to prevent this catastrophe. Did USA and European Union did enough to prevent it? Did Ukraine and its president Volodymyr Zelensky overplayed their hand, or did Russia have any other option? The answer to all these questions is simple. Nobody except Russia could have done anything more to prevent this. If Russia wanted, it could have just not invaded. This war will stop only if Russia wants. This does not mean that USA and EU are free of blame. To understand this war, we need to first understand the reasons behind Russia's so-called military operation. The reasons can be broadly divided into two categories, historical and security. While historical reasons are mostly based on falsehoods, some of the security reasons are legitimate. Historical, the disintegration of Soviet Union in 1991 had greatly impacted Vladimir Putin, who at the time was a member of the KGB, the fearsome spy service of the Soviet Union. According to him, this was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. He constantly criticized Mikhail Gorbachev, the head of the USSR at the time, and held him responsible for the dissolution. Some experts believe that he wants to create a sphere of influence of Russia similar to that of USSR, that he wants to bring Russia back to its pre-1990 glory. This is not true, as he wants to go a step further by establishing the pre-1917 Russia, the Russia of Tsars, the Russia before the Russian Revolution. He came to power in 2000 and has been ruling Russia for 22 years. He believes his time to make an impact, to write his name in the annals of history of Russia along with the great Tsar, is slowly ending, and therefore he has to act now. When Ukraine joined USSR, Vladimir Lenin said that Ukrainian nationalism should never be underestimated, and as a result, Ukraine was given a semi-autonomous status in the USSR. Putin, on the other hand, believes that Ukraine does not deserve to be an independent and a sovereign nation. He also stated this in a long essay in 2021, which was dismissed by the West as the rumblings of a madman, and also in a speech just before the war. He believes and propagates that Ukraine had always been a part of Russia, and that modern Ukraine was created by the Bolsheviks under Lenin, and that it was done very sloppily at the cost of the mother Russia. A lot of the facts about Putin's version of the history are incorrect. Ukraine has a history of around 1,000 years in which it has seen multiple rulers, religions, and borders. It only came in complete control of Russia in its current form in the late 18th century when Russia was ruled by Catherine the Great. Also, Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, was established hundreds of years before Moscow. None of this matters to Putin, as he completely believes in his version of history and through his propaganda has made most of Russia believe it too. The security reasons for Russia are somewhat legitimate. North Atlantic Treaty of Organization (NATO) was created during Cold War by USA and Europe to counter USSR. At the end of the Cold War, NATO had 16 members, and it gave Russia assurances that it will no longer expand as it had no reason to do so. In the intervening 30 years, NATO has continued to expand, especially in Eastern Europe, and now has a total membership of 30 countries. This has always irked Russia and Putin, and rightly so. Russia has been particularly against Ukraine joining NATO, as they both share borders. NATO ignored Russia's concerns and, in 2008 announced that Ukraine and Georgia, which is also a former member of USSR, are on a wait list for NATO membership, although it had no real intention of inducting them in the near future. In 2019, under President Zelensky, NATO membership and EU membership were enshrined in Ukrainian constitution, which angered Russia even more. Russia considers the peaceful protest by the Ukrainian people in 2014 that deposed the pro-Russian Ukrainian president as a coup. Despite these concerns and insecurities of Russia, this war cannot be validated or legitimized. A powerful nuclear-powered nation cannot attack its smaller neighbor every time it feels a little insecure. Russia should and must have resolved this situation diplomatically and peacefully, respecting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.